Hello everybody. Today we are going to be doing another topic video. I think a couple weeks ago I did a video on underrated actors and actresses, so I figured I'd just switch it and do overrated. Who do you think is the most overrated actor or actress and why? So here we go. We'll start with the first one. Leonardo Dicaprio. For me, his best work has been Wolf of Wall Street and Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Everything else, including his Best Actor win in The Revenant, I just do not see what everybody else sees. He's worked with some of the greatest living directors, the ones known for pulling great performances out of actors and actresses, and he is okay in many of those parts. The Aviator, The Departed, Catch Me If You Can, I walked away thinking a lot of people could have played that part just as well. I'm not saying he's bad, just overrated. And yeah, that's an important distinction to make. It doesn't necessarily mean they're bad actors, they're just, in your opinion, they're overrated. And yeah, I couldn't agree with you more, and I was actually glad to see a lot of people put Leonardo DiCaprio. I've always felt kind of weird because I've always thought he was very overrated, one of the more overrated actors in terms of the big, accomplished stars, and a lot of people think I'm crazy. People think he's absolutely brilliant. I agree with everything you're saying here. You're talking about Wolf of Wall Street and Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. I so agree with you. I think he's great in those parts because those roles in a way are meant to be kind of cheeky. They're meant to be very boisterous and over the top. It's a lot of mannerisms and physicality. That's because those characters are, not necessarily cerebral. They're more physical beings, and they do everything kind of more based on impulse rather than thought in terms of how they're presented on the page. But I'd also like to agree that I think he's really good with Tarantino. Specifically, because he writes parts just perfectly suited for him. Another one is Django Unchained. I thought he was marvelous in that. But that doesn't mean that theatrical style necessarily matches with every kind of director out there. I will never understand why Martin Scorsese saw him in the way he did when they did, Gangs of New York the first time, and he sort of became his muse after that. I never thought he fit with Scorsese at all. Scorsese films, I think, really depend on the depth, and I've always felt that with Leonardo DiCaprio, while he is really, really good at a certain type of thing, and again, like we said, very funny, really good, just really pushing and being really physical with his performances, it's like he's taking a shit when he's performing a lot of the time. It's that effort that in a way almost makes it, kind of distant, like he is the butt of the joke, like he doesn't realize how he's coming off. And again, so when you use that as part of the humor, I think it really works. But in Scorsese films, like other than The Wolf of Wall Street, I really didn't feel that as much. I think it needed more of that danger. Even with somebody like Joe Pesci, obviously a very humorous, very physical actor, but yet he had a real depth to him, where you really were afraid, what's he gonna do? From minute to minute, how is his mood going to change? And it's eerie and it's scary. With Leonardo DiCaprio, I never feel that intimidation. If anything, it just kind of stays in this sort of cartoony box, and rarely does he ever move me in any way that other than that. And as I said, not untalented. He's certainly a talented person. I just never will understand how he got as critically acclaimed as he is. Emma Watson. How she became popular is beyond me. She seems like she's giving only half the effort at most in every role, as if she doesn't care. Even in good movies like Little Women, she's easily the worst part, and how she got so much praise as Belle in Beauty and the Beast, at least by the general public, is a total mystery to me. There are dozens of unknown actresses out there that could have done better than her. Okay, well, I mean, yes, that's obviously true. There's dozens of actresses that could fill that part, but that's not the point. Like, that's true of every great actor, even the greatest actors out there. There was probably 10 people that are even more talented at that time that could have gotten that audition or whatever, and it just didn't happen. That's the cruel nature of this business. So I don't take necessarily issue with that. I take issue more with how the public sort of latched onto her once she grew out of the Harry Potter frenzy. You were saying, I don't know how she became so popular. That's why. When you have a big franchise like that, that's your springboard for your future endeavors and in whatever fashion. But with Emma, I think really it's more kind of her activism, when I say activism, I mean very much in the celebrity virtue signaling sense. A lot of it is more her persona outside of her acting. It's her fashion sense. It's her demeanor. That is what people like. They like her elegance, but when she is in a movie, there's really very little to admire for me. I totally agree with you. She's often the weak link in most films. I did not see Beauty and the Beast. I didn't see it for a reason, because I saw, a few clips from it, and the auto-tuning and everything was just really, really offensive to my ears, and I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. And from what I saw, yeah, her performance felt, like I like to say, straight out of community theater, but that's how the majority of her performances feel. to me, she's one of those examples where I really don't think there's much talent to back it up. She has talent at a certain thing, at marketing herself, at, she's charming, all of that. But as a performer, I've never really understood the appeal there. But that's often the risk with child actors. You cast them when they're young and they might really be suited for a certain part. And that doesn't necessarily mean they're going to develop into great actors. We see that a lot. But yeah, you're saying, there are dozens of unknown actresses who could have played Belle. And it's like, well, yeah, of course. But there's also a lot of known actresses who could have played Belle. Actresses who can actually sing and can actually act. And I think that's kind of essential because Belle is such a wonderful, kind of very human character, passionate character. But yeah, that's just how I feel. I'm sure she's a lovely person, but just as an actress, it just never quite did it for me. Natalie Portman. The only performance of hers that has any discernible human warmth is Garden State. Otherwise, she approaches every performance like it's a grad school thesis. Nothing in her performances is natural. Everything is studied, clinical, and absent of genuine emotion. Thank you so much for saying that. And you're saying it better than I ever have. You're so right. She approaches it like it is a grad school thesis. She's one of those very porcelain, kind of petite, gorgeous women where everything just feels kind of cool and elegant and distant, and never do I ever feel like I'm really getting in there and I'm feeling something from her that is really raw and powerful and dangerous. She has her moments. There are moments, I think, like Garden State, as you mentioned, where she's quite charming. I actually think her best performance is in the Professional, which, that's another example of somebody who you find a great part for somebody that's younger, and it really, really works. It doesn't necessarily mean they're going to become great actors. When you watch her when she's young in that part, the reason it's so perfect is because that character is meant to be somebody that is very beyond their years. I mean, she's still a young girl, but she's also very wise, and she has to grow up really fast, in this world that she's been thrown into, and she's adapting in such a fashion. So I think that, in that role, perfect for her, perfect. But yeah, I kind of think this is one of those situations, and we see it often, sorry, I feel this way about Margot Robbie, I feel this way about Keira Knightley, Natalie Portman as an example. They're not, they aren't untalented people, but they're not the most talented. It's their beauty, I think, that is really the draw here. They have faces that are easy on the eyes, and that is often more alluring to people than the real breadth of talent. I reviewed Black Swan over the summer, and I talked about Natalie Portman in that role, and I thought to myself, it's a strange choice to cast her. I think she did as well as she could have. I really think, it's one of her better performances. I think for her, she's really pushing. You can tell she really worked hard for that, so, I commend her for it. But again, it's not pushing to that transcendent place that I find is most compelling with the great actors. I look at people like Juliette Binoche, and if we're going to talk about people who could have played that role in Black Swan, Isabelle Adjani. Watch her performance in Possession. It's one of the all-time great performances as far as I'm concerned. Just how unrelenting it is and how fearless it is. And it's just like, this is the woman who really has balls, I think, who could really play that part well and really take us into uncharted territory. But as it is, again, it's very kind of neat and perfectly packaged, which really works for, maybe the first half of the movie when she's meant to play that role, but it doesn't, the transition is just not convincing. And even with Jackie, like you say here, very studied, clinical, that's exactly how it felt. You could tell she really did her research, every little kind of mannerism and the voice was absolutely perfect. It was very, very much an imitation. And yet I felt nothing from the actual performance. I never felt her really becoming the role of Jackie Onassis. Tom Hanks. Overrated doesn't mean bad. He is good, and he's been in some entertaining films. He's basically average guy in far too many of his films, though. He doesn't have the range power of a Daniel Day-Lewis or a Toni Collette. Well, who does have the range of those two wonderful actors? But that's, yeah, I agree with you. I do think that Tom Hanks is overrated as an actor, but I do think his big strength is he's a performer. He's an amazing performer. You watch him, on talk shows and everything, and he's just the light that enters the room. He's very positive. It seems, based on what I've heard, he's great with fans. So that's why people like him. It's not so much, again, it's very much a star sort of thing. He's found the kind of roles that really work for him, that really appeal to the masses, and he's capitalized on it. He can be a very good actor, as he's proven, especially in his earlier roles, but I think it's one of those situations where he's not necessarily the most versatile actor, as you're saying here. He's picked certain roles that really, again, play to his strengths. I don't ever see him going to like deep places. I don't ever see him playing Daniel Plainview or something like that because of so much of his public persona outside of performing. And also he has such an ease and a humor. He is so likable. You know, like performances like Big, you just fall in love with him. And even movies, you know, I don't like movies like Forrest Gump, but he's great in that. I think he really works for Spielberg. The drama of Spielberg, he can be minimalist when he needs to be, but always somebody that you want to get behind. So very Hollywood maybe is the best way I would describe Tom Hanks. And he's kind of carried that over. You know, he's playing characters like Mr. Rogers. He knows who he is, and that's the key right there. Knowing who you are as an actor, knowing your niche. You look at him and people say he's the new James Stewart, or he's the James Stewart of the modern day. And I do agree with that to an extent, but I also think that James Stewart is a far more accomplished actor. He's somebody that I think can really go into dark territories and more kind of versatile territories. Ryan Gosling, who should only be cast in stoic, aloof, detached, indifferent, and one-note characters. Yeah, I think that Ryan Gosling's one of those people, when it comes to dramatic acting, that's just something I don't think he excels at. I think for whatever reason, I think it might have had to do with, I think, Blue Valentine and movies like that at the time. People really saw him as this really dramatic, emotional, kind of gritty actor, like the next Marlon Brando or something like that. And I never really felt that. I think it's more just he was seen as a movie star and he was able to get in on those parts that became sort of classics, where you do have to be kind of that stoic Steve McQueen type of performer. But yet with me, when I watch him, especially in roles like that, he's very rarely compelling to me in a dramatic sense. I look at somebody like Steve McQueen and just with a look, he's extremely stoic, extremely compelling, and you can feel a lot of dimension there, you know, even though you're never going to really know what it is necessarily. That's part of what makes him interesting. With Ryan, it's just, you know, he's one of those people, I say it sometimes, but he doesn't have that compelling draw in his eyes, that intensity. It looks like he's kind of just waiting for a bus. So I never really feel it. And that's why, you know, I think it's, in a way, he's kind of perfect for a role like that he played in Blade Runner 2049, where he's meant to be very detached. He's meant to be very cold. But even in that, you know, if you are a replicant or maybe you're not, whatever, I think there are still ways of playing that in a compelling way. I've seen people play robots and such very well, where you're very drawn into their performances. I think Ryan's problem as a dramatic actor really comes through when you watch a movie like La La Land, and I talked about this in my review. I think Emma Stone is wonderful and believable all the way through it, whereas Gosling, it's a little, it's a little one note. I think, you know, at the beginning of the movie, he's playing to his strengths, just kind of like an asshole. He's very just kind of, you know, standoffish, clearly is annoyed at the beginning by Emma Stone's character. So all of that, I think he really does well. But then when he starts to develop feelings for her and he really loves her, you know, I don't really feel it. I don't feel it much at all. But I think what Gosling is actually very good at, and I wish he would do more of, is comedy. He's really, really good, I think, at comedy. He's very deadpan, but in a way that is just really kind of natural and kind of like in a Buster Keaton sort of fashion. What was that movie that he was in with Russell Crowe? It was called, I want to say The Other Guys. I could be wrong on that, but I thought he was really, really great in that. And their chemistry together was absolutely wonderful. And it brought out this whole other side of Gosling. And then when you watch him on talk shows as well, especially like Graham Norton, he has just a great deadpan sort of delivery to his anecdotes, to his jokes. I just think that's what he's meant for kind of strange, kind of off-kilter buddy comedies that can be very cinematic, like the movie I just mentioned. So yeah, I've kind of discovered for a long time, I thought that Gosling was really overrated just as a performer, as an actor. But then I realized, you know, it's kind of like Tom Hanks. He just needed to find that thing or that director, whatever, to help him really flourish. And, you know, I expect him to do a lot more of kind of the big budget movies where you just kind of stand there and get paid millions for it. But I hope to see more of this. I like to see more of that range in him. But anyway, that is my topic video for this week. Thank you guys so much for watching. Over here you will see all of my patrons. Thank you guys so much for your support. If you're into art by any chance and you like to support artists, starving artists like myself, I do that sort of thing. I do commissioned portraits, sketches, and I have prints available as well on my website. It is deepfocuslens.com. You are welcome to peruse. If you'd like a commission or something like that, if you have any questions about purchasing, you can always email me. My email is below as well. I'm happy to answer any questions or work with you. And other than that, all of my social media is below. You can watch more videos here and you can subscribe if you'd like. Catch you next time.